넘어가는데 잠시만요. 됐습니다. So he's our founder and he's a pastor. So our shelter is Christian-based shelter, and it was originally a church. So we'll start on that. When you hear the word pastor, you probably imagine someone gentle and kind, someone grew up going to church, but Pastor Kim was nothing like that. To be honest, his younger years were nothing to be proud of. He was addicted to alcohol. He was drowning in debt. He could never pay back. In his hometown was actually Busan. Do you know Busan? Busan is the second biggest city, and he was living there. And people knew him as a rough, violent young man. He was a street fighter with a nickname that basically meant the toughest rock on the street. He was like a gangster. He had his little own gang, and he was the boss of that gang, I believe. Yeah, he wasted years of his life, and eventually, people he owed money came after him. So he ran away from them, and that was the place called. That was his young. I think he was in a prison or something back then, right there, and he ran to the place called Kidowan. That word might be new to you, and there's actually a cultural history behind it. Korea is a land full of mountains. They cover most of the country, and before Christianity arrived, Buddhism was the main religion here. So for centuries, Koreans were used to climbing into the mountains to pray. To Koreans, the mountain is a special place to set apart from the busy everyday world down below. That's exactly what makes it perfect place to focus completely on God. So when Christianity came to Korea, Korean Christians built their prayer houses deep in the mountains. It was very quiet, where people do nothing but pray, sometimes for days or weeks. Even today, when life gets hard or when people have something very deeply want to pray about, they head to a prayer house like that. And very often, people go when they've hit rock bottom, when there's nowhere else left to turn. But Pastor Kim didn't go there because he had faith. He didn't go there to pray. He went there for only one reason. It was to hide from the debtors. A prayer house deep in the mountains was simply the last place his debtors would ever look. And in that place, he accepted Christianity and became a pastor. He was an alcoholic and fighter, but he changed his life completely and became a pastor. And he saw some vision of God telling him to go to Cheongyangni. You know where Cheongyangni is? It's right here, Cheongyangni. This land is where he was alcoholic, where he formed his gang. That was Cheongyangni, and he came back there to build a church. There's in Cheongyangni, now it's gone. There's a district called 588. It means 588. 588 district was what Koreans called a red light district. Let me show you. That's the 588 district. You see the cross there? That was the church. And that area was a very violent, dangerous area. It was one of the darkest corners of Seoul. It was a place where women had to sell their bodies to survive, where the poorest and the most looked down upon people in society ended up there. Crime was everywhere. Most people wouldn't even walk through that street if they could avoid it. And churches, back then, churches were built in nice, safe neighborhoods as far away from 588, this district, as possible. That's why this was such a sensation back then. A church there, people couldn't believe that there was a church in 588 district. Pastor Kim believed something different. He believed the church doesn't belong where life is comfortable. It belongs in the lowest place, right next to the people everyone else has given up on. He spent his life with the respectable people He sat down and ate with tax collectors and outcasts. Uh, yeah. So Pastor Kim planted his church right in the very middle of 588, not at that, not at the edge of the neighborhood, the middle, because in the church is really, if the church is really the light of the world, he thought, then it should stand where it's darkest. So after like 20 years, he served about 1,000 free meals a day and cared around 200 homeless people. The women of that street, the addicts, gangsters, and the forgotten. Then in 1997 came an event that shook all of Korea. There was IMF crisis, we call. You've probably learned about the Great Depression in America. Banks collapsing, families losing everything overnight. Korea went through something similar in 1997. A massive financial crisis swept the country. Koreans call it the IMF crisis. Companies collapsed one after another. Fathers and mothers who had worked hard their whole lives lost their jobs in a single day. Some lost their homes, some lost their families, and the streets and subway stations of Seoul began to fill with people who had nowhere left to go. Almost overnight, homelessness, which had been rare in Korea, has exploded. And Pastor Kim watched this happen right outside his church door, and he did something very simple and very radical. He opened the door. He began turning the rooms of his church one by one into places for homeless people to sleep. He went out on the street and the train stations and simply brought people in. No conditions, no applications, no questions asked. When people asked him, why do you bring these people into the church? His answer was simple. These people are the mission of God has given me. The man who had once been rescued from the bottom now spent his life pulling others up from it. When homeless people started filling the church, many church members were upset. They smell, some said. They're dirty. This isn't what a church is for. And many of them left. Yet some people stayed. And the ones who stayed rolled up their sleeves. They bathed people who hasn't washed in months. They cooked. They did laundry. They sat with broken people and listened to their stories. In 1998, in the middle of the crisis, the shelter, Canaan Shelter, was officially established. It stands today on the devotion of those who stayed. Pastor Kim passed away in 2021. Here's one last thing about him, the detail that tells you everything. Even past the age of 70, he never owned a home of his own. He lived in a small rented room until the end, because every time he had money, he made same choice: feed one more homeless person instead. Yeah. Okay, that's the story of Pastor Kim, and part 2 is what we do here every day. About 100 men live here. About 100 men lives here with us. Some stay for months, some for years. And here's the most important thing I want you to understand. We are not just a place that hands out meals and beds. Of course, the food and the safe place to sleep matter. You can't rebuild your life while you're hungry and freezing. But if that's all we gave, people would stay homeless forever, just indoors. Our real goal is different. We want every person who walks through our doors to one day walk out, standing on their own 2 feet. We call this self-sufficiency, and everything we do is designed around it. Let me give you a quick tour of what it looks like. These are the jobs we do. Yeah. First, work and job training. Many of our residents work, some in jobs outside, some in programs we connect them to. Having a job isn't just about money. It's about waking up in the morning with somewhere to be, with people counting on you. It's about dignity. Second is debt and credit recovery. Here's something most people never think about. Many homeless people aren't just poor. They are trapped under old debts, sometimes from a failed business or from being cheated years ago. In Korea, if you have bad debt, it is very hard to open a bank account, get a phone, or receive a normal paycheck, which makes escaping homelessness almost impossible. So we sit down with the residents one by one and help them go through legal processes to resolve their debts. Third, medical and emotional support. Life on the streets destroys the body and the heart. Many residents arrive with untreated illness, and many carry deep wounds, broken families, betrayal, years of being treated as invisible. So we connect people to hospitals, and we run counseling programs where residents can sit with a professional counselor, and often for the first time in their lives. Often for the first time, to tell their whole story to someone who listens. Fourth is community. We run clubs and group activities because loneliness is one of the heaviest parts of homelessness. And even after residents leave us and start their new lives, we don't say goodbye. We run a monthly gathering for people who have moved out, where former residents come back, share a meal, and encourage each other. Recovery isn't just a moment, it's a long road. We help them not to walk alone. And I want to talk about the homelessness in Korea today. Let me share the most recent numbers with you. According to a 2024 government survey, there are about 12,700 homeless people in Korea. Let me break down, because homeless doesn't mean just one thing. About 6,700 of them live in the shelters and facilities like this one, and about 4,700 live what we call 쪽방, and this word is hard to translate. You can just, that's the picture of 쪽방. Imagine a small room, so small that you can, when you lie down, your head touches one wall and your feet touches the other. No kitchen, often no window, sharing one bathroom with whole floor of strangers. People pay rent for these rooms. It's technically housing, but barely. And about 1,350 people live directly on the streets and in subway stations. Roughly 8 out of 10 are men, and many are middle-aged or older. For a comparison, the United States has roughly 770,000 homeless people. Of course, America's population is much bigger, but even considering that, homelessness is a far more visible in the US. In Korea, you won't see tent cities like in Los Angeles or San Francisco. Korean homelessness tend to be more quiet, more hidden, tucked away in those tiny rooms, in subway stations late at night. But hidden doesn't mean it's gone. Here's something interesting. The number of homeless people in Korea has actually been going down little by little. It dropped about 12% compared to 3 years ago. Good news? Is it a good news? Well, it's a yes and no. And this is the part I really want you to understand. Back in the IMF crisis I told you about, back then homelessness came like a sudden storm. About 4 out of every 10 Korean households experienced job loss or bankruptcy during that time. Ordinary people, office workers, shop owners, people just like your parents, were pushed onto the streets in a single moment. Their problem wasn't laziness. It was a whole society collapsing at once. And when the economy recovered, many of them could climb back up. Today's homelessness is different. The total number is smaller, but the people who remain are stuck in much deeper trouble. Homeless people in Korea are aging fast. More and more are seniors over 65 years old, with no family to return. Many live with mental illness or disabilities that were never treated. Many carry those crushing debts I mentioned earlier. In other words, in the past, homelessness was often a temporary fall. Today, it's more like a deep pit. Once someone falls in, climbing out alone has become nearly impossible. And what pushes people into that pit in the first place? Still, the uh, number one answer is the same as it was in 1997. It's losing a job. In summary, homelessness in Korea has become smaller in number, but deeper and more complicated. And that's exactly why a place like this matters. Handing out sandwiches helps someone survive today. But climbing out of a deep pit, that takes someone reaching down, holding on, and not letting go for a long, long time. That's what we try to be. And for the last, why should we help? Now we come to the most important question of the day. Why should we help homeless people at all? Many people, maybe even some of us, quietly think things like this. They're lazy, they just want handouts, they did this to themselves, they're a burden on society. From a distance, it is easy to think that way. I understand why people do. But me, after working here and hearing the real stories behind the faces, I want to tell you three things. First, they did not end up there simply because of their own mistakes. As we just saw, the biggest reason people become homeless is losing a job. Then add a failed business, a sudden illness, a family that fell apart, a childhood without anyone to teach or protect them, debts from being cheated by someone they trusted. These things pile up layer by layer until a person is finally pushed onto the street. One man who lived through the IMF crisis put it this way: people don't come bad. People don't become bad because they are born bad. Sometimes society makes them that way. Nobody dreams of becoming homeless when they grow up. Nobody chooses it the way you choose a career. Maybe the reason you and I are not standing in their place is not that we are better or harder working people. Maybe we've simply been luckier, born into different families, different circumstances, different chances. For second, uh, it could be any of us. A person with a good job today can lose everything through one serious illness or one company shutdown, one accident, one disaster. It happened to hundreds of thousands of ordinary Koreans in 1997. It happened to millions of Americans in 2008. Homelessness is not their story. It is possibly that exists quietly for every one of us. So when we build systems that help the homeless, we are really weaving a safety net, one that might one day catch us or our parents or someone we love. Helping them is, in a very real sense, protecting ourselves. Third, helping the homeless people actually benefits everyone. Some people say helping them is a waste of money, but the truth is that is exactly opposite. If a society just leaves people on the streets, it still pays through emergency room bills, policing, sanitation, endless crisis management. Studies around the world keep finding the same thing. Abandoning a homeless person costs more than helping them recover. And think about the other side of it. When one person gets back on their feet, everything flips. He works and pays taxes instead of needing support. He rents a room, buys groceries, becomes a customer and a neighbor. A person who could only receive becomes a person who gives. Every single success story is a gain of all society. So helping the homeless isn't a charity money disappearing into a hole. It's one of the smartest investments a society can make. Uh, a warm heart says we should help. A cool head, looking at the numbers, says exactly the same thing. When both your heart and your head agree, that's how you know something is right. And that's it. Thank you for listening. Okay, any questions? Yeah. I'm sorry. Oh, I can't hear you. IMF crisis. Oh, it's the International Monetary Fund, right? The that's in the United States, and Korea had bankrupted. The whole country was has collapsed. We owed money from IMF. That's why we call it IMF crisis. And we couldn't pay money for IMF. That's why our whole country has collapsed. That's why we call it IMF crisis. Yeah. Yeah, it is supported by the government. Our shelter is supported by Seoul, Seoul City. We actually have a program, and people go like under the bridge or anywhere and check their names, and we have the ID card. Even the homeless people have ID cards, so we check the numbers, names, the number of their identity, and we check everything. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. You have to when you're born, you register. You have to register. Like like maybe 98% of every population is registered in Korea to the government. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. So there are homeless people who doesn't have their houses, but they still have the ID card. So we can check who that is and their numbers. Yeah. Yeah. Ah, you should ask my parents. I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, that's a good question though. Actually, the population like exploded in 2002. You know why? Because of 2002 World Cup. There was a World Cup, and every couples had yeah has exploded. Population has exploded in 2002. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Also that. Mm, okay, that's about it. Thank you for listening. I'm sorry of my English. I forgot. I'm so sorry. Okay. Where are you guys heading after